Dealing with innovation in a complex global environment. Yay, last presentation before Thanksgiving. There's one more presentation next I guess in 2 weeks because I'm taking virtually a week off. And then we have the final. I want to warn you a little bit about the final. The final exam is difficult. It is unlike the rest of this course, which is self-assessments, introspection, responding to each other, which is a very important part of leading and of management, leading in a complex organization. But the final exam is going to require you to know vocabulary terms, the vocabulary terms in the study guide, which is in the course content section of the Sakai website. And the definitions for all those terms are there too, as well as citations, as well as a format of the final exam. So I want you to study, as you go through these slides, the best way to prepare for the final is to really focus on the terms that I've defined in quotes. And that definition is there for a purpose, to get you to be familiar with the term and what it means. So know the terms, know how the terms are different from each other, all the different types of influence tactics or basis of power or whatever, how they differ from each other, and most important, how they can apply to the realistic management situation. I'm going to ask you on those things. So if you have any questions about the final exam, share them with me. I'll be happy to have discussion, forum, or whatever. Meanwhile, here, dealing with innovation has to do with, well, a new type of business. One of the great differentiators between business today and business even 20 years ago is complexity and globalization. And the fact that the environment is much more turbulent than we've seen in the past changes things. So let's see and I have 3 examples of firms that have dealt with it, so maybe they'll be a good example for you. Let's get going. A couple of just eternal characteristics of innovation. It's absolutely necessary for the long-term viability of firms. It's innovate or die. Firms that don't innovate will get copied by the competition. They will tend to be stuck in outdated technologies, processes, leadership styles, and be overtaken. The world is changing, including the world of management, the way that firms are managed. Very lots of things happening, and I hope you get a chance to study them more in depth in your other courses. I can only very basically touch on them now. Get to know a few characteristics. First of all, innovation is a numbers game. So firms have a large variety of ways that they can change operations, enter new products. It could be entrepreneurial, entering a new product, entering a competing firm's product, diversify, or the innovation can be in the new technologies that a firm uses, new investments in new marketing strategies or logistics strategies, logistics operations. Now, these investments have one thing in common. Innovation are speculative. A lot of them fail. And we all hear that new businesses, new entrepreneurial ventures fail at a 90% clip. The 10% that succeed are fabulously successful often, but within firms you get similar numbers. If you're investing, Google's example is great. It's invested in a lot of businesses and innovations that have failed. And the nature of innovation is that the failures are sort of unpredictable. You don't really know which ones are going to fail and succeed until you make the investment and make some initial investments, do some pilots, and get into it. So a challenge to firms is to engage in innovative activities and not go bankrupt. How can you support a range of innovative efforts, tolerate failures, and celebrate successes There are three examples later on in the slides where I'll talk about how firms can do this. All require sort of an innovation in the management style, in the management culture. Now, successful innovations, one thing that we know about successful innovations is they're difficult for competitors to imitate. If a competitor can imitate it, then it's really not going to be a source of increased performance in the long run for the firm. And you can think of lots of examples of firms maybe selling their goods online or engaging in crowdsourcing. There are things that firms can do that are innovative, but if competitors can very easily imitate it, can very easily copy it, then it's not going to help the firm. So it's a little more challenging once you factor in competitive imitation. Then the types of innovations become riskier, become more speculative. Now, characteristic of innovation is its conflict. If a firm has a bunch of innovations, which one do we follow? And some managers will follow one, some will follow others. Managers in general, in many firms, have entrenched interest. And they were brought up in one, they came through the ranks with one product or one way of thinking, and any challenge to that is going to be resisted by them naturally. So how do you basically, as a firm, not give in to those innovations, those vested interests that are a barrier to innovation? Well, those barriers, imply that they're difficult decisions and involve conflict, and so we'll get into that later. Often it's viewed as cannibalization, that if a firm introduces a new product, it could compete with the firm's existing products, and that's a challenge. But to be successful, we've got to do that. Firms have to do that, and to keep ahead of the competition. Kouzes and Posner, Chapter 7, Challenge is a Crucible for Greatness. A lot of very neat material here, talking about, well, what makes a leader great is facing challenge, embracing change. And when people embrace change, they get resistance. Conflict is a natural part of facing challenges. And when people are facing challenges all the time, they need to develop their resistance, because facing challenge is stressful. And when you're dealing in a stressful environment, you could get sick. Your immune system goes down. I love that analogy. But you need to develop resistance. You've got to be the one to resist the opposition. And you've got to lead the opposition. And incidentally, that's how boardroom fights happen. In most organizations, the top executive doesn't last for 2 to 3 years. And likewise with senior executives. There are always these types of conflict situations, mostly regarding around, challenge, but adapting to innovation is a challenge. And managers will tend to choose a side, one side versus the other. And very often, managers on a losing side of a major decision, they get replaced. Hence the turnover. Doesn't mean they're bad managers, they just lost this fight. Sometimes they were right, but they still lost. So resistance is necessary. In order to limit turnover, a very nice point in Kouzes and Posner was that failure should be celebrated. And we'll get to that a little later. But, just because you fail in one thing doesn't mean you're a bad manager. It should mean that you learn from your mistakes and can do a better job next time. And, there's that old saying, where does success come? Success comes from experience. What does experience come from failure? So, perseverance, again, a type of passion, is another evidence here, too. Now, to flesh this out a little bit, the business environment is fraught with complex challenges, and I get this from another text, but in our society, of course, technology is changing all the time. How do firms deal with new technology? And sometimes there was forecast at one point that all bricks and mortar stores would be gone and replaced by online stores. Possible. Maybe it'll happen in some industries. But even in the bookstore industry, Barnes& and Noble is still around. But so is Amazon. Technology presents unique challenges. And of course, in manufacturing, the robots that are used are very common. Technology in large areas of business is changing things. So is regulation. Very interesting that the regulators recently, and we'll get to this hopefully, caught VW in its fraudulent activities to defraud the regulators on its emissions. Well, that's the way VW dealt with the regulatory change with the higher pollution controls, is to cheat. That's one way to deal with it. I would argue perhaps unethical, but the idea remains firms are flummoxed by some of the changes in regulation. Consumer tastes, cultural change, new blending of cultures, new immigration, uh, the role of women in society, the role of education in society. There are lots of cultural changes happening, and we have to deal with them. Of course, competition and globalization, you can almost put those together. Increasing competition and increasing the speed of the cycle of competition. More and more firms are competing in what they call fast cycle markets, where constant innovation is necessary in order to stay ahead, and all the gains, all the benefits, most of the benefits of firms are temporary in nature. Globalization is part of that because a lot of the competition now is coming from abroad. Firms in the United States are competing against European firms and Asian firms. China is growing, of course, and has a large presence in many markets. Demographics is also changing. In the United States, the population is getting older. In Japan, the demographics are even more severe, as with a low birth rate and low fertility among women. The demographic change, the aging of the population is much greater. So in any number of places, complex challenges face businesses, and organizations have to cope by adapting. There's no way that you can change these trends. You just have to observe them, predict them, and adapt to them. Good luck. Great discussion in Kouzes and Posner, Chapter 9. The best leaders are the best learners. In other words, we all start out in life as people, but some people become leaders and some people don't. The difference is simply some people learn how to be leaders. So all of us can be leaders. We just have to think about it. We have to engage in a learning process. Now, it's really nice, the 5 steps that Kouzes and Posner mention for leadership. First of all, when you practice, the best leaders become that because they practice leadership. So, 5 characteristics, and I'll repeat them here. The practice is designed specifically to improve performance. Yes. So leadership practice should be something that will improve your leadership ability. Second, it must be repeated a lot. Yes. Leading once doesn't do it. You have to lead it and then repeat it. Now, other people say repeating something, you can actually look for another leadership practice, or you can simply get a lot by just thinking about, reflecting on a leadership practice session. Reflection is very important for leadership. It's a soft skill, and reflection actually helps you to put it all together. Third, get feedback. Yeah, as you're leading, see how successful your organizations are. Lead through some outcome, and that helps. Fourth, highly demanding mentally. Leading a PTA, leading a task force, leading a Boy Scout troop, leading a club. All very difficult to do. And often you get these clubs together and somebody says, "Who's going to be the leader?" And nobody wants to raise their hands. Well, one way to practice is to raise your hand, take a leadership position, take on the challenge, and learn from it. Interesting, practice doesn't necessarily mean succeeding. Practice simply means repeating. And fifth is it isn't fun. Leadership is sort of a science, and well, not sort of science, sort of a uncomfortable situation, especially dealing with conflict. Conflict is not fun, but it's important to learn how to do it, so you have to learn. What you can do is get support. Most successful executives have a few friends, a few confidants, no matter where they are, they can call. It doesn't have to be in their organization. It could be somebody from a classmate. Hopefully, in your class, you'll develop some relationships. I love that in your posts, you're developing some feedback in your replies to each other. Wonderful. Develop those skills. Get to meet each other outside of class. Develop those relationships. MBA relationships are great. Also in your organization, also your family. Lots of different possibilities. So, just a little second point here. Be open to leadership opportunities in various organizations. You can use your persuasion techniques. Be aware of your power, your referent power, expert power. Develop emotional intelligence. Lots of ways you can develop your leadership skill, and then, like I say, reflect on it. Good luck. Regarding how Lincoln dealt with uncertainty and the environment, there was a term that Phillips uses, paradox. So here it is. On the one hand, leaders, Lincoln in particular, have to be consistent. And there is a consistency, especially with regard to values. And in Lincoln, it was how to treat people, how to make assignments and promotions, which were done by merit and done after and looking at a track record for success and so forth. The way he interacted with staff, with respect and openness, and his administration and management of government. Throughout his administration, Lincoln was consistent on these types of things. And I'd add to this that the consistency enabled the development, at least, of knowledge-based trust. That you knew when you were in Lincoln's administration that certain things were going to be consistent. However, of course, in the Civil War, government was in turmoil. There was huge environmental pressures that Lincoln had to adapt to. So, balance the consistency with paradox of his need to change. And it's important to look at page 79 and 80, some of the ways that Phillips notes that Lincoln was kind of a paradox, consistent yet flexible, charismatic yet unassuming. And I like the last one here. Lincoln claimed not to have controlled events, that his policy was to have no policy, when, in actuality, he did control events to a very large degree by being aggressive, taking charge, and being extraordinarily decisive. We'll get to that more on that later. So just understand that in Lincoln's case, the need to be trustworthy, the need to be consistent has to be balanced with the need to change policies and change values. And very nice that he actually sacrificed the Constitution of the country. I mentioned that he took over the Maryland state legislature with the federal forces, something that maybe isn't known too much about Lincoln, but very controversial. And last point, I'd say be wise enough to understand the difference. Understand where your values are, what you need, what you'll always be true to, but then also understand what you need to change, and also understand perhaps that the paradox brings great pain, brings suffering, and he had this way of dealing with that pain by writing letters and then not sending them. That's maybe something of the times, but I think too many of us write those emails that we don't mean to send, and then we do send them, and then we pay a price. Maybe Lincoln did that earlier, but then he learned not to send the letters, and that's one of the reasons he was successful as president. Phillips chapter 12, wonderful stories about Lincoln and how he's a patent holder, the only president to hold a patent, and how he's always looking for better ways. He tried to keep in touch, keep on top of new technology. He relied on the telegraph to get news from the front. I don't think the Confederate forces had the technology that Lincoln commanded with the Union. And I want to draw two main points from the chapter. First of all, always searching for better ways of doing things. Never happy with the status quo. Always, as we mentioned in the last class, appreciative inquiry, going to the future, and celebrating failure. Always looked at his generals who failed or that he fired, as well a step in the right direction. Or we certainly learned a lot from this. Let's go better with this new direction. Second point, draw from your subordinates their collective wisdom. I've been amazed at many experiences I've had in organizations how a group of people can make better decisions than any single expert or person. That's generally true. If you take a bunch of people and quiz them about what the stock market will do tomorrow, a group of experts maybe, you'll get a better response from the average of those experts than most any expert. Likewise with technology. What's the right way to go with the technology? You're better off getting input from many people, especially a diverse group of people, than you would with any subgroup of those people or any single person. So the nature of innovation is so uncertain, unpredictable, that you have to use all the wisdom that's out there. And groups who are not hobbled by groupthink or other ways that limit their opinions, limit group members' opinions, will make better decisions than any individual. So let's see. The next step is to look at management innovation, and I'm going to describe 3 cases later on that where management innovation management innovation. The invention and implementation of a management practice, process, structure, or technique that is new to the state of the art and is intended to further organizational goals. Basically, we used to think of organizations as hierarchies, maybe, like the military. Somebody on top makes all the decisions, makes all the investment decisions, approves all innovative efforts, and so forth. And then this simply passed down the hierarchy to the members. Most organizations, most successful organizations, especially in volatile environments, don't have a hierarchy. As a matter of fact, I think there was one firm, well, firms are moving away from hierarchy and even towards all organizational structure, hierarchical organizational structures. The goal here is to get input from everybody and get everybody working together on implementing innovation, on dealing with changes in the environment, and getting away from the blame game, blaming others for any failures. All failures are collective, all successes are collective in some of these organizations. Balance that with the need for accountability, and there's another type of management innovation, and you'll get some of the hybrids that we see in the following slides. In some of the following slides, I want to emphasize the differences between management innovation and other types of innovation. Management innovation is not product innovation. Product innovation is the result of a technological process or some other, it could even involve a different manufacturing process that is sort of restricted to the R&D departments, but basically every department is doing its job and a new product comes out. Very different, new knowledge is brought into the product and may help sales and everything, but it's not a management innovation. Process innovation, similarly, a new way of making a product. It could reduce costs. It could involve using robots instead of using people. Again, kind of limited to the operations part of the firm and not necessarily affecting the overall way the firm is organized. Management innovation is not technological innovation. Technological innovation can change a lot of the reporting systems or even the information flows within a company, email, file transfers, even enabling things like virtual teams. Still, the fact that there are teams and the fact that the information still flows to the same people, technological innovation can affect how that's done, but not the basic human software of the firm. Strategic innovation also. A change in strategy may change what managers do. It may change the perspective on the way people look at the environment and may change the focus of the firm's long-term efforts to improve performance. Or business process innovation. Firms have all kinds of policies, procedures, systems in place, and business processes like budgeting or approval of new product or approval of investment. Those processes can be innovated but still not quite as far-reaching as management innovation. What is management innovation? Management innovation involves the basic assumptions that a lot of us make about how firms are organized. The fact that there are reporting relationships between individuals, that results automatically in a hierarchy. Well, in the example on the previous slide, there are some examples, and in the firms coming up, there are examples of firms that have sort of done away with that hierarchy. That's a management innovation. A management innovation may have to do with other basic management processes, like establishing accountability. So we sort of assume that when somebody does a job, there's going to be some sort of a measurement of the outcome of that job, and on the basis of that outcome, we get a reward or we get a promotion or something negative. So accountability, however, a management innovation would be something that does away with that basic assumption. Maybe has an organization that is not organized around accountability. And it sort of challenges a lot of our thinking about what's professional and so forth. But there are firms out there challenging some of these basic human soft organizational principles that we sort of take for granted. And I'm going to talk about these in the next three cases. The three examples I'm coming up with are very successful firms. Of course, some management innovations fail. Those firms just aren't around anymore to talk about. I wanted to take this slide, though, and emphasize the difference between management innovation and how revolutionary it is versus these other types of innovation. If you want to read more about it, read the work of Gary Hamel and the article that I cite by Birkinshaw, Hamel, and Moll. Good luck. As mentioned before, conflict is a natural part of innovation and organizational change, and I wanted to get some definitions or get some of the literature involved on this. First of all, the idea is groupthink. Groupthink is when people withhold their contribution to a group decision process because they value the consensus. And that's a problem because basically the more people withhold their contributions, the lower the quality of the group decisions and the lower the performance of the organization. So, well, how do you get out of groupthink? One way is through conflict. Actually, their conflict is probably a necessary part The recent thinking on conflict. Conflict is a necessary part of organizations, especially avoiding groupthink and getting the most out of people in the organizations. But there's two kinds of conflict. One's good, one's bad. The good one is constructive conflict, where people have conflicts over issues while remaining respect. So you're simply arguing about the best direction of the organization or the best policy. You're being persuasive, maybe, as an influence tactic, without sharing anything personal. And constructive conflict is fun. You have a debate over something objective, something that's an issue. Relationship conflict is destructive conflict, and always destructive. I think some of the theorists argue. It's conflict in which people focus on the characteristics of other individuals rather than on the issues. I think Donald Trump is causing a lot of damage to the Republican Party in some people's mind because he engages in relationship conflict. And now, who's going to challenge Donald Trump in any forum? He's just going to beat you down and insult you. Hate to use that as an example, but it's parroting what a lot of people say. In any case, relationship conflict is always, according to the theory, destructive. It does not contribute to better organizational decisions, and it even has a tendency to associate with groupthink. Why would you withhold your opinion in a group process? Because you're afraid of retaliation, which would be a relationship conflict type thing. So, conflict. Constructive conflict, the more you have it, the better. It's always has a good outcome. A relationship conflict, the more you have it, the worse. Bottom line. Now, my first of three examples of management innovation. Whole Foods. So, let's look at a characteristic of Whole Foods. You're hired into Whole Foods, you're trained, you're a part of a group, maybe produce or meat or something. From early on in your career, you can make major store changes, like putting a new item in the stores, and you're given that power right away. Very unusual. In other supermarkets, the decision to change store items is something that's hierarchical. It goes up the hierarchy, it has to be approved and whatever. Not so at Whole Foods. So that particular aspect is kind of interesting, and let's look at how it does it. Team members are hired and they're trained. They're part of a team, and they learn that the performance of the team determines their compensation and determines their status within the store. So if you're part of the fruit aisle and you bring in new types of fruit or a new design for the fruit part of the store, you might increase sales, and increasing sales increases your status. That's the way Whole Foods work. There's sort of a competition within the firm. So how do you make decisions about new store items? Well, there's information. Whole Foods is constantly collecting information on customers and competitors, and when new information comes out, like I say, anybody can respond and change the store items. Now, there's risk, though. Just because team members have the power doesn't mean they're free of accountability. If you change an item or you change a store item, you can help your team, and you'll get even social rewards. You'll get respect from your team members. But if your decision it does not help the division's performance, then you can get censure is a strong word, but certainly the decision will be reversed, or modified, you'll learn something from it, so it's not always a bad thing. But on the other hand, you'll lose the group bonus that comes with increased sales. So there's accountability to the objective criteria, a lot of like what Lincoln did. He wanted the accountability to. W.L. Gore is one of those companies. Its headquarters is in Delaware. It just doesn't have, it's always on a very good list, the Forbes 100 Best Places to Work list. That's a great list. You should all try to get jobs in those 100 firms. W.L. Gore is always on it. How does W.L. Gore's management work, and how does it deal with innovation? Well, you're hired as part of a project. So W.L. Gore makes Gore-Tex, and you might be hired to do marketing for Gore-Tex or something like that. Fine. Now you're given about 10% of your time every week, and some firms give more time, but you're able to spend time at W.L. Gore on other ideas. So within W.L. Gore, there are hundreds of items. Teflon coated guitar strings, other fabrics, other products. And you might want to work on some of those or contribute your expertise on those, or you might want to join the team on a specialized project, on a new innovative product that is bubbling in people's minds. So within Gore, there's constantly these little groups. They take about 4 to 5 hours a week. They can meet, work on their projects, think about how to market it, how to produce it, the technology. And your challenge, if you want to champion an idea like spacesuits, would be to collect people within the firm who have the right mix of capabilities, of know-how to make your new project succeed. You develop a business plan, and when ready, you apply for resources. Within Gore, there's a team of people, of experienced executives, who the challenge would be to make them unbiased, but they were probably brought up appreciating the fact that W.L. Gore has to innovate or die. It thrives on innovation. So there's this team that evaluates the business plans and will fund internally with internal funds a certain subset of the business plans that come to them. The process is transparent. The team says these are the things that you need to establish in order to succeed. Among them are factors like, is there a market big enough to support our investment? Do we have a unique competitive advantage? Is it difficult for competitors to imitate this product? The criteria are transparent, and the team that evaluates these business plans therefore is also charged with marshaling the resources. If Gore has a good year, it'll fund more of them with more money. A lean year, fewer of them. So the key thing here is that innovation isn't a top-down experience. It's not that the CEO figuring out which way Gore is going to grow. The growth comes from these collaborations between mid-level managers, and the direction of the company is sort of like amoeba, like it'll go in directions depending on what the environment lets it grow in, and we call that emergent. A lot's been written and talked about with Google and how it manages innovation. Of course, Google is a very successful company, but it started as a search engine, and then it suddenly went into smartphones, the Android, and other advertising and other businesses. How did it do that? Well, first of all, Google has a lot of failures too. It's one of the most failure-ridden companies, but because the successes are largely home runs, it's able to tolerate a lot of failures. What happens? Well, the employees at Google just like Gore, the description is they have to recruit others and get get endorsements for their projects and develop collaborators with their projects. The projects are constantly attacked. So there are people who attack your project, say it's not going to work, it's not big enough, the market's not good. Apple can do the same thing or whatever. And the proponents of any project therefore develop an ability to defend their projects and argue convincingly that their opponents are wrong. Now there's a debate, and like I say, if you champion a certain project, you're going to be debating against all the others, and if you're and likewise, so there are factions, and they sort of like have this fight, but it's all constructive conflict, focusing on the issues. Google is known for hiring smart people from top universities with really high GPAs, and that probably determines the nature of the debate. It's very much a technical. They use a lot of technical language and big vocabulary, but you tend to get good decisions. And the track record also speaks for itself too. Google is able to learn from its mistakes, and those lessons are often incorporated in the arguments for and against new project. Like Gore, the strategy is emergent. Where Google is going to invest in next sort of is determined by which projects become the winners in the internal marketplace, and those winners get funded internally, as in Gore's case. I want to challenge you guys to develop your organizations into learning organizations, become more innovative, to develop more capability for innovation, a more tolerance for the unknown, and hopefully therefore more able to adapt and survive in a future volatile business environment. A learning organization is an organization that takes a proactive approach to an unknown future. Whole Foods, Gore, and Google embrace change, constantly adapting to the environment, and they do so by using the capabilities of mid-level, low-level, all levels of managers and even employees. The idea of an organization as a hierarchy where strategic decisions and directions of the firm are done by top managers who have some sort of monopoly over what the future business world and what the company is going to do, and what the best approach for the company is, sort of like not used in these organizations. And the top-down approaches tend to be slow also, because good ideas may percolate up in the top-down approaches, but they have to be approved, debated, and more likely will become subject to some sort of political process. The organizations mentioned, Whole Foods, Gore, and Google, they have emergent strategies. The firms sort of are amoeba-like. They change in all different directions depending on what the environment will allow them, but they also don't spend too much on innovations. They figured out ways to focus resources on the most likely innovative projects, and they have ways to discontinue unprofitable projects, and even ways to continue with innovative projects that may not look successful or have high potential from the outside, but people on the inside, very smart people, are able to support said projects, and very often they turn out to be successful. So I guess my challenge to you is, well, get your organization to become a bit like these models. In terms of leadership ability, lead within your organization some effort for innovation, and try to figure out how to structure arguments, how to build a coalition, how to make that innovation succeed. Or if the arguments against your innovation are indeed compelling, then abandon that project, treat it as a learning experience, and look for the next project.
Good luck.